Hello from the Kristin Chronicles. Just out here in my fairy cove, my morning meditation. Wanted to talk about alters and getting to know them, alternate states of consciousness within a dissociative identity. When I was diagnosed with DID a year ago, I was like, okay, voices in my brain, who are you? What are your names? And what do you want? Like, tell me. And it doesn't work that way. No one explained it to me. Therapists would be like, oh my goodness, it's going to be triggering even try to talk about this, maybe not. But therapists would basically be like, okay, let's bring out an alter. What's your name? And I'm like, what are you even trying to do? Like, what are you saying right now? Like, what are you trying to bring out of me? Like, what are you talking about? And, like, it's not called multiple personality disorder for a reason. These aren't just, like, other people in my brain. It's all versions of me. I just don't understand it because I'm so dissociated. So the dissociation needs to be addressed first in treatment. Therapists, they're so silly when they don't know, but they pretend to. Like, yeah, that really gets me. Anyway, moving forward, identifying parts. So they're not just these, and I will clarify this. Every dissociative identity is different. I'm speaking from my own experience. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same as other people with a dissociative disorder. I just want to clarify. I'm speaking my truth from my own perspective and knowledge and experience, and it's not necessarily covering everyone else. Just want to clarify. But for me anyways, and from others I've talked with, so I'm guessing it's some other people, just not everyone. It's not just these little people in my brain that kind of come out on their own and just like introduce themselves with like fully formed names and like personalities. That didn't happen for me. So it's been a very, very tedious process of identifying personality discrepancies. And I just shared a video on that, I think yesterday, if you want to check that out. Identifying personality discrepancies. And so that's a lot of mindfulness, a lot of note-taking, and then a lot more mindfulness. It's literally being mindful of every single moment and like how I'm experiencing things in comparison to how I experience things at other times. And so recognizing personality discrepancies, I started that process over a year ago and knew that there were a few alters and was getting nervous about how many I had. Once I started to recognize the personality discrepancies, and once I started to go through a process of a lot of self-compassion, radical acceptance, and beginning to approach trauma work, basically, that's when alters started feeling comfortable to actually like come forward and like come out and kind of like share from their own perspective. Until that point, it was basically like suppressed because I was scared of my own self without like quite knowing that was what was happening. When I would experience these symptoms, I would get so scared that I wouldn't be curious and mindful and sit there observing. I would sit there freaking out. And so, symptoms with dissociative identity disorder are communication from parts. That's literally what it is. When there's something going on, anxiety, depression, insomnia, flashbacks, anything, weird somatic sensations, body pains, emotional flashbacks, I mean, you name it. All symptoms with dissociative identity disorder are communication from parts. And so we have to be mindful and curious and pay attention to that as if it was a helpless cry from a little child. And so approaching that process and using the concepts discussed in Janina Fisher's trauma book, Healing the Fragmented Selves of Trauma Survivors, Overcoming Internal Self-Alienation, using that process in the past years was allowed me to actually get to know my alters. And then there's been a lot of self-hypnosis. After regular meditation for a couple years, I graduated to being able to do self-hypnosis. And through that, I can actually interact with my parts of consciousness like they're other people I'm meeting in a dream or something. And so that's been phenomenal. And through that process, we've been able to actually like get names and like direct answers to stuff regarding specific parts. Up until that point, it was just a guessing game. And then, does this feel right? Or does this make us anxious? Like, does this comfort us? Does this reassure us? Does it make us feel uneasy? And so it was just a guessing game. And so now I can actually be a little bit more direct with my parts. Different parts are getting named. And now that I understand the process, it's a little less scary, because I kept doubting myself, thinking this isn't real, this isn't whatever, because I thought that alters were supposed to surface differently. And so this is just an important note to know that mental health is as vast and complex as the consciousness itself. Your soul is so unique that your mental health is also going to be unique. And especially with something like a dissociative disorder or a personality disorder, a lot of your identity is shaped around this mental health. And so getting to know your consciousness is what it's all about, regardless of what mental illness you struggle with, to be quite frank. Like, it's way more important and powerful with something like DID, but getting to know your consciousness really should be top priority for any and every mental disorder or illness out there. And so getting to know parts of consciousness, mindfully observing, being compassionate, letting go of judgments, letting go of how you think it's supposed to look, letting go of the past conclusions you drew regarding these things you're experiencing, letting go of what you think is happening in order to be open to what is actually happening, beneath the surface, and just extending grace and gentleness and compassion and tenderness to yourself every day. If I take a day off self-care, my sanity suffers tremendously. And that's saying something. Like, one day I don't invest in self-care, and it's like, why am I even alive? Like, it's bad. And like, I really believe that if we can just love ourselves the way we want to be loved, we are also going to heal ourselves the way we want others to heal us. I kept going to doctors and this and that, just like, someone please fix me. And when no one could help me, and person after person, dozens and dozens of people later, and years and years and years later, nobody could help me. And I'm like, all right, so I can either like die in a hole, or I can be the person I've needed this whole time. I've tried that, it's failed. So let's try this and just see what happens. And so that decision was a little over a year ago, about a year ago. There were steps leading up to it for sure, but the full-on commitment of I'm done trusting doctors over my own self. I'm done believing in medications that have proven to not work. Like, I'm done limiting my potential just because other people have. That decision was 1 year ago. And as you can tell, if you've been following my journey, things have changed radically. A year ago, I was homeless, completely disabled, like way more than I am now. I didn't know what was going on. I had no ability to recognize my parts of consciousness. Dissociative blackouts were way more constant, way more severe. Self-harm was at an all-time high. It's now at an all-time low, thankfully. 1 year ago, I had like zero mindfulness. Like, my ability to meditate was like 30 seconds in, I was either bawling my eyes out or screaming at the top of my lungs. Like, I'm not even kidding you. 1 year ago. It's so impressive what we can do when we decide it's going to happen and nothing is going to stop us. Like, all of this change, all of this magic, all of this healing, all of this brilliant growth began with a decision to make it happen. The resources are there. The answers are all within. We have everything we need. It really honestly comes down to being more creative with problem solving and tapping into resources. Like, society likes to put things in a box, and so we kind of restrict our thinking. But the more we can tap into our childlike creativity and playfulness, and the more we can say, there is nothing that's impossible, the more we can allow ourselves to dream, the more we will actually gain the ability to creatively problem solve and overcome literally any and every obstacle. Like, yeah, it takes time, it takes work. I'm not saying that it's just like an easy thing and it happens overnight, but I am saying it is 100,000 quadrillion% possible. So, identifying parts, getting to know my consciousness. We have names now, we have mindfulness, we know who's out. It's incredible.